And we are live. Hello, everybody. Oh, give me 1 second. I've got feedback coming in. So, how you all doing today? I'm here with Tesok, our art director, and Sami is in the background.
And we are live.
Providing
Hello, everybody.
some translation. Oh, there we go. Okay. So, how's everyone doing today? Can I get a kappa // in chat? So today we're going to be running through a little bit about the process we used to create the world, looking at lighting and a few other bits and pieces to show off. So first of all, do you want to say hi, Tesok?
Hi, my name is Taesok Jang, art director of PLAYERUNKNOW'S Battlegrounds. I started working in the gaming industry for 12 years. At my first job, I worked on a first person shooter game, and then afterwards, I was a character modeler, and then I've worked on many MMO games for 12 years. This is my first time working on a Battle Royale game, and we only started with 5 people when we first started the project, and it was a small team, and we had many difficulties. But as a Battle Royale player, I really enjoy Battle Royale games, and I want to, you know, put this game into the hands of our players. So we've been working very hard.
Okay, so let's give y'all a little bit of a history when it comes to the map. So when I was coming up with the concept for the island, I believed that creating a lore or a history to why the island existed was important. So did that help you when you were creating the overall look for the map?
Well, first of all, Brandon came up with this fictional island where Battle Royale would be happening. And it was important that to create a realistic world where Battle Royale tournaments would take place. And when I first saw this image of fictional island, there were a lot of trees and foliage on the island, and placing all that just by hand would be almost impossible. So it was important to find and establish efficient production pipeline for this.
Oh no, sorry.
And to create a realistic world, we looked at a lot of other games that have great realistic environments, and we also play them a lot and spend a lot of time on Google Earth to look at Eastern European islands, villages, and buildings. And few of our members, including Brandon and I, also went to check to get motion capture data, and we captured mocap data, but also took a lot of pictures and check to understand the terrains and foliage in that area and familiarize ourselves.
So let me give you a quick look at the initial, because some of you might have seen this, but this was the initial map concept I came up with for Battlegrounds, and it's not showing. Okay, super. Okay, I know what's wrong. Okay, so this was the initial concept I came up with for the island. I took a pen and just started coming up with an idea. I wanted to create an island that had a variety of biomes, a variety of areas, and some choke points to make Battle Royale rounds interesting. How did you then use this to help create a map?
So Brendan, showed us this image, and to convert this into a game environment, we built some workflows, and I will just explain a little bit about the process we went through to create the island. As we started with a small team, we had some limitations, but within those limitations, we wanted to iterate faster and then build the island from ground up. So we did a lot of research on how to establish a really efficient pipeline. So to maximize efficiency, we chose Unreal Engine 4, and to pursue realistic art style, we used PBR, physically based rendering techniques. So PBR is literally based on physics. It uses certain rendering techniques to express textures in a very realistic way. And when we create PBR textures, we use tools like Substance Designer, Substance Painter, and these tools can create textures procedurally. So it's very fast and efficient.
Okay, just give me 1 second. So, can you explain a little bit about the procedural techniques used to populate the world with foliage and other materials?
So as I mentioned before, we have this huge island that is 8 by 8 kilometers, and it's almost impossible to place foliage by hand. So we had to use procedural feature in Unreal Engine 4. And you've seen that image that Brendan just showed. So we edited this image to create the composition of the entire island. And we used this image that we created using satellite images. And then we repeatedly used the satellite images to create different maps for the island using the Unreal 4 procedural feature. And to place foliage using that procedural feature, that feature requires a certain mask map for that part of the island. So we did a lot of research and found this tool called Material Map. And Material Map uses satellite images and then reads mask information from the image and learns the pattern. To dive into more details, it looks into specific patterns that are repeated in the image, and then it automatically learns the patterns in the satellite image and then extracts a map based on the image that we put into the tool.
Yeah, so you can see here on the image we have on screen that this is the image that the material map gives out. And the green areas, for example, are where trees are. Then you've got different colors representing different parts of the terrain. You can see a little bit more detail in this image where these are the various masks that material map spits out. And each of these are assigned a particular material in the engine, and that gets translated into the game. So Tessa's going to show you on the editor what this material map is.
So we extracted mask maps for trees, fields, grass, and then we put it on the world and the engine, and we place it on the location that we want. And then you see this kind of satellite image in the engine. And then on this area, I wanted grass. Here I wanted trees. So what I would do here is I use the procedural foliage feature in Unreal using the mask map I got from Material Map. And then, as you see here, you will see that certain areas only have grass. And then in some areas, there are bushes. And then here you see, other types of foliage. And for the rest, you see trees. So that is the workflow we followed. So eventually, we came up with this production pipeline, so we didn't have to, place all trees and grass by hand, and we were able to populate the island faster than expected. If we didn't, have this feature, I think our game would have launched way later, maybe 2020.
Yeah, doing stuff by hand is a very laborious process, that's for sure. So, can you tell us a little bit about optimization? Because it's very important when it comes to creating an open world and some of the steps you're taking to really optimize the map.
So during our previous alpha tests, we realized certain things. There were some players, testers that were not able to play our game due to performance issues. I was very, sad to hear that a lot of people were disappointed. So, we want to further optimize our game while not sacrificing the quality of art. We want to make sure that our game runs smooth on your PC. So we are also focused on optimizing at the moment. So rendering performance was largely affected by foliage. So we are recreating some of the assets for foliage. So our game would be lighter. And we are limiting the distance for real-time rendering. So we are creating, other structures to make sure that performance will improve. And then we're also controlling the amount of assets that are shown when you're looking around. We are also, finishing that level streaming structure.
So yeah, just to give you a little bit of intro about level streaming. So what level streaming is it breaks the map into basically a grid of different areas. We use about 600 different levels. Now it's not a straight structured grid. It's a grid made up of where there's a lot of assets and such. And as a result, what this will do is it will allow you to run the game with less RAM. Now, our minimum RAM at the moment is 8 GB, and it probably will remain as such. But it just means for you that you load the game a whole lot quicker. And what level streaming does is that it loads the levels around you. So before, what was happening was that the whole map would essentially be loaded, and that's why we were using a lot of RAM. Now the map gets loaded in levels around you, and it just allows us to increase performance. And honestly, as a client, you really shouldn't notice any difference on the map. So what you're seeing in the background here are some new level or new areas we've been working on. This is a flooded town that is on the banks of a river. Yes, we're adding a river to the map. We have this lovely ruined building or ruins area, which is beside the river. But yeah, let's get back to questions. You'll see a little surprise at the end of this as well of a new area we're excited about. So moving on to lighting a world. You spent most of your career working on MMORPGs. And so what were some of the main issues you faced when moving on to a realistic open world and trying to get the lighting correct on that?
So I've always worked on MMORPG games, and they use different kind of lighting and environment settings. So it's very like dreamy, it has to be beautiful, and they use like exaggerated lighting settings to create artificial environments. But we are, aiming to create a realistic battle royale game, so there was a huge difference. And regarding, production, MMOs or other FPS games I've worked on, they use pre-baked textures and light maps and shadow maps. And those maps are used to set up lighting for the game, but it would be difficult to use the same approach to our game because we have a huge map. So to create realistic lighting for our big islands on real-time environments, we use a lot of new features. Like we use reflection capture, we use indoor masking that controls the amount of lighting that goes into indoors. So to create a real-time, realistic lighting settings, we use a lot of new
So
features.
you mentioned HDR there, and just to explain to you all what that is simply put, it's the difference between, say, a photograph and a movie. So if you take a photograph of an indoor scene, very often the outdoor lighting will be blown out and very white, whereas in a movie, the details in the shadows indoor will complement outside, and you'll still see the detail on skies. So that's essentially for HDR in our game. It means that indoors you will be able to see the detail, and outdoors you'll still be able to see the outdoor without appearing blown out. So Tessa's going to show us now some examples of this on the editor. So there's our sexy Asian man.
So after we wrapped up our Alpha 2 playtests, we realized that it's important to create good PBR sources for realistic textures, but our lighting should be more similar to the real world. So we realized that, and I think we didn't do enough to improve the lighting for our last alpha. And as Brandon said, we used HDR, but we did not use it to its full extent during our second alpha. So in the previous test, We did use HDR system, but back then we used a smaller range of lighting. So whether you're looking at a light areas or lighter areas or darker areas, like the details would be smudged. So we improved the details. So we widened the range of HDR. So now it looks more similar to the real world and it simulates, you know, our human eye behavior in real world. You can see the details like the of this texture. You can see more details better now. There's more reflection to the surfaces.
And just so to make a point here that a lot of what you're seeing is still work in progress. You know, this is not a final product you're seeing right now, and Tesla's working every hour God sends him to make sure that the lighting looks amazing for when we finally release the game.
So for indoors, although it's pretty dark, you can still see the differences of the surfaces. During the alpha indoors, it was very dark, so you couldn't see the differences between materials, but now you can see that they are, you can see the reflection. It's more realistic than our second alpha.
Yeah, I think that the indoor lighting now is really starting to look great. It's I could,
Although we are at a beginning stage of utilizing this wider range of HDR, we are working on improving this further. And what's important is that this everything has to be real time. It has to change real time on this 8 by 8 kilometer open world island.
okay. So, and just finally, like, did you what did you sort of source as kind of references and when you were looking at coming up with a lighting idea for the game?
For lighting, to make our lighting settings more realistic, we did a lot of research, found a lot of references. Some we looked at pictures that show, great lighting, and we, looked at a lot of other games that have great realistic lightings.
Okay, so moving on to talking about optimization of the game. One of the biggest one of the biggest problems for optimization and making the game run smoothly, as you said before, is foliage. That foliage really eats up a lot of processing to render out correctly. So how are we tackling that? How are we fixing foliage on the map?
So as I said, performance issues were, you know, one of the big reasons why some testers were not able to fully enjoy the experience. So we are trying to further optimize the game, and we are aware that a lot of that comes from having a lot of trees on our island. And, there are other elements like terrains, but, it is very important that we optimize tree assets in our game to further optimize the entire game. So we use this approach called imposter. So for other games, when there is a tree that is rendered at a far distance, you just use a flat image, but we actually use 25 images and render all these images to make sure that all the trees are visible at any angle and it would look natural and realistic when you're in the island running around.
So, for example, in this image here, you see lots of trees, but the trees are not really there. These are all imposter trees. So if we look at the wireframe, there are no trees. So all of these trees are basically 2D images that rotate to face your character. So they basically, when you get close to a tree, of course, we will render the full tree and you will see the branches and such. But at distance, these trees will just be 2D surfaces, right?
And what's more important is that, it has to include all the high details of the actual 3D meshes so that it doesn't look like a flipbook image. and it has to have the reflection, indirect light, but it's not the full mesh that we would use that are rendered at a close distance. So it's more lighter than a full 3D mesh.
So this will really bump up performance for the game, correct? Yeah. So again, these are more imposter trees. There are no trees there. Uh, but yeah, so this will really help with performance in the game because foliage, because there's so much of it on the map, it's really it really ate into our performance, and this is going to give us a big boost. So anything else you want to share about the game? No? Okay. So that's it for the Q&A with the AD. So what are the team currently working on?
You know, what's important for our next testing is that we don't want to sacrifice the quality of our art style, and we want to optimize it so everyone can enjoy the Battle Royale experience. And we want to improve the lighting so it's more realistic. And first of all, we want to, push for development so we can get the game into the hands of our testers and Battle Royale players. So please hang in there.
Yeah. So someone just asked in chat there, so having so much foliage on the map, will that make the game more CPU heavy? Well, as we just talked about, there won't be a lot of foliage on the map. As we said, we'll be using a poster to put in 2D images, which really boosts performance in a big way. So let's move on to a Q&A from, we can do that later. Let's move on to a Q&A from the forums. So we'll start off with some of the bigger questions you guys asked. So people were asking, is the beta going to be for a week or a day or 24/7? So what we're planning to do at the start is basically run it like the same way that we did the last time. So we want to upgrade and improve and fix bugs every week. So running the servers 24/7 for the 4 weeks is just not possible at the moment. In the beginning, we're planning to limit the playtime, but gradually increase it to 24 hours over the weekends as it goes on. Muse Origin asks, can we have any precision on when the closed beta will be available? Beginning or end of February. We can't really give that information out at the moment, but in a few weeks, I'll be doing a dev blog post on our roadmap for the future, and you'll see a lot more information on that, on how we plan to launch the game, etc. We will be giving out more keys, YouTube Fran Papa, and regarding do we have planning on having invitationals in the future? Yes, but we don't have any detailed plans just yet. So some questions from Tessok for Tessok. Let me just see who asked that first. So Blaman asked, I've been really impressed by the environmental art DICE has produced in Star Wars Battlefield and Battlefield 1, or Battlefront and Battlefield 1. Have you guys looked into their techniques regarding photogrammetry and asset production? And how do they compare to your own production pipeline? So,
Well, in the beginning of development stages, we are not aware of this approach, but we found out about it later. And I think it's a very interesting approach that gives great results. Recently, to optimize our game, we have actually used this approach to create new trees. So you'll be able to see some trees that was created, based on photogrammetry. And after we release the full game, we will, adopt new approaches to further, enhance our game.
so as much as like we wanted to do so much, but because we have such a limited time frame as to how when we want to get the game out, and there's a lot of stuff that we've had to push back. But once we release the game, we're not going to stop there. We're going to keep going after that. So someone else asked, are we planning on more maps? And once we finish Erangel, yes, we plan on creating more maps. And with the experience of creating this map, we should be able to do it relatively quicker, right? So let me see what other questions we have. So Redemption 99 asks, are there any big changes to gameplay or mechanics from the last alpha into the beta? Yes, we're really aiming to give you much more realistic gameplay. Our new animation systems will be in the beta. While not everything will be in, we're aiming to get a large percentage of them in, and you should feel that the game is a lot less clunky than the last alpha, right? Um, so anything else? Let me see. Oh, weather effects. So we we were going to show off some weather effects today, but they weren't ready. So what we're going to do is upload some gifs later on, or a short video showing off the new rain effect, which I honestly think it looks great. Mr. Wolf asks, will the weather effects be dynamic through round or predetermined? And again, this comes back to the time frame we have. While we'd love to do dynamic weather, and we probably will add it sometime in the future, for the closed beta, at least it'll be predetermined. So it'll be either, a non-rainy round or a rainy round. Oh, actually, talking about effects, can you talk a little bit about the effects artist, how he's adding different effects into the world to make it more real?
Well, he have been using several approaches, so it would be difficult for me to just pick one.
Well, for example, he's adding in blowing leaves in the wind, and electrical effects on boxes and steam.
Well, we want a world with a more dynamic settings, so we have been adding new effects that have like small details. So in certain areas of the world, you will see leaves, blowing around, and when it's raining, you will see, raindrops on your camera. So we use post processing techniques to make sure that you can immerse into the settings when you're playing.
Oh, finally, Nails87 asks, how much of the world are you planning to make destructible or interactive with the players?
Well, as a battle royale player, you know, those kind of interactions is something that I also enjoy as a player. You want to destroy like things in game, but we are reviewing the performance issues at the moment, and it's also deeply connected with gameplay. So we'll have to consider many factors to see if which extent we want to go to.
And this again comes down to performance as well. While we'd love to have a world like Rainbow Six that you can blow apart every wall and every uh, bit of the world, when it comes to performance, it's just not really possible with an open world. But we're committed to adding more interactive elements into the world. So just a few other questions. We haven't worked on implementing SLI just yet. There will be hotkeys for consumable items, and there will be duos available in the closed beta. So both game modes, both solo and duos, will be available in closed beta. But for the first week, it'll be solo only. So I think that's most of the questions. Oh, sorry. So will there be any new vehicles available to test in the closed beta? Asked Redemption. No, not in closed beta. Hopefully, we will get some added when we approach launch. Any new skins? Well, we have two new characters we're going to show off now in a minute. And someone else asked about the coats, why we decided to put those in. Everyone wears them because they find them in the world, or they get them in crates. But as we add more skins, it's just they're the skins that are in at the moment. So that's why the coats are there at the moment. So let me see. Okay, so let's look at the two new characters we have for that you'll see. show. So these are two of the new characters, or two of the new skins, and you'll see a new hairstyle there as well. I think these look pretty badass myself. Yeah. These are again done by our character artist Cedric, who just is a talent above all else. He a really great character artist. Um, so let's go back to the new areas for a second because I want to show you something you didn't see at the end. So this is our flooded town, correct? This is on the banks of the river that goes through the map. Someone asked how we decide where to put different areas, and for the most part, we try to keep it somewhat as realistic as possible, correct? That we look for what we're making, and then we look where on the map it would be the best place to put them. I really like what they've done with the water. I think the water really does look great. But just lately, we've got some extra environmental artists on the team, correct? Yeah. So, yeah, no. So, like our extra environmental artists, we've got a good team now that are going around the map and trying to finish off areas. For example, in the previous alpha, there would be a house in the middle of nowhere, and these guys are going through and fixing all these little details to really add a lot more texture to the map. Yeah.
Yeah, there are a few environment artists who have just joined our team, and we want to further upgrade the overall quality of our environments. They've been hard at work every single day to upgrade everything in this island.
Yeah. They're doing a great job from what I've seen. So let's keep watching this for a second. This is the new like ruined area we've shown just earlier. I'd skip through this, but yeah, it's still in OBS, so a little bit hard. But again, we're just trying to add more and different areas, so you know when the blue zone finishes, you've got interesting areas to fight in. So later, mhm. Yeah. So that's coming as a little surprise at the end. So we also got a surprise for you. So some of you may have seen we got some really cool mouse mats just at Christmas with some key art. So later on, we're going to give you those as a desktop for iPad as well. So let me just show them off after we show this video. The guys will post it in the chat for you to download. So I think these areas are really starting to come together nicely. This is our quarry.
So we used Google Earth images of Eastern Europe areas. We looked at, a lot of references and tried to create areas that make the gameplay different. So we had to find areas that have a great look and has elements that could differentiate the experience just because of how the area is structured.
Oh, so there's a few more questions from chat. Someone wants to know if we can see the transition of the 2D trees to 3D. Is that possible? So the transition from imposter to real tree. Oh, sorry. Is it possible to show the transition between the 2D trees to the 3D trees? So from imposter to real tree.
So for every LOD, we can set the distance about from where it will be rendered. So we calculate the distance from the camera to the trees, and then we use that to render trees in 2D or 3D. And these settings can be changed very quickly. So we are changing these settings to test the entire thing.
Yeah, we get some GIFs of these transitions for you later on and post them on the Twitter. This is another new area, like a poisoned or dead forest, and in the background you see a power plant that we have that we're adding. These areas are all work in progress and still have a lot of work to be done to them. So this is a little surprise for you. We're going to have underground areas now. While these not may not be pertinent to battle royale, we really feel that, to give the map texture and to give modders a better map to work with, we thought adding some underground areas would be really cool. I remember from my days playing Delta Force Black Hawk Down, creating some really great game modes in sort of tunnel maps, and this is why we added this. So again, it's just adding some new and interesting areas so that modders can really go mad with the map. So let me do one more thing and show you off the desktop you all will be getting. Oh, excuse me. Okay, so let's turn this off for a second. And where is it gone? Oh, it's not there. Okay. Let me see. Okay, why is this not showing anything?